When the whole AI craze started, I listened to a lot of podcasts because that's where the newest info was. I've stopped since. I'm doing my own research, drawing my own conclusions, but there's one person I still listen to when they speak, and they don't speak very often. It's Ilya Sutskever. He was the head scientist at OpenAI. He was behind the idea that scaling was everything, that you needed to make the data bigger, that you needed more compute, and that then the results would get better. He was also behind some of the most influential papers in AI research. He worked with Geoffrey Hinton, who's sometimes called the godfather of AI. And just recently, he gave an interview to Dwakesh Patel on his podcast. And I want to comment on some of the key insights from that because I really find it interesting and
sucked out all the air in the room.
Yeah.
And so, because scaling sucked out all the air in the room, everyone started to do the same thing. We got to the point where we are in a world where there are more companies than ideas by quite a bit.
I really want you to appreciate the importance of this moment. This is one of the great priests of AI, Ilya Sutskever, who walked around the OpenAI offices saying, scale, 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 was one of the believer in the so-called scaling laws, the idea that if you used more compute and if you used more data, you would always get better results. And this worked to a certain point. This got us where we are now. But let's be honest, when we compare the different outputs of different models, they're remarkably similar. It's not like one company is making a big step. It's not like one company has this exponential increase in quality that everybody speaks about. But I feel most advances are incremental. And here is Ilya Sutskever, who says, going the same way that we have been going will only get us so far.
If I think what people are doing right now will go some distance and then peter out. It will continue to improve, but it will also not be it. So we don't know how to build. And I think that a lot hinges on understanding reliable generalization.
Scaling won't get us to it, which is obviously artificial general intelligence, the next level in AI. Basically, I feel what he's saying is that the emperor is naked.
The thing which I think is the most fundamental is that these models somehow just generalize dramatically worse than people.
Yes.
And it's super obvious. That seems like a very fundamental thing.
So this is one of the essential elements. A human just needs to drive for 10 hours and they can master driving. Whereas you need to feed a car that you want to be self-driving with millions, if not billions of hours of driving for them to successfully drive. So the models are very bad at like taking a low amount of input and then creating a good output, and from moving from having seen 5 dogs to recognizing all the dogs and so on and so forth. They're very bad at generalizing, and they still are. And Sutskever is saying we can't overcome this with the current paradigm.
One of the very confusing things about the models right now, how to reconcile the fact that they are doing so well on evals.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at the evals and you go, those are pretty hard evals.
Right.
They're doing so well. But the economic impact seems to be dramatically behind.
Yes.
And it's almost like it's very difficult to make sense of how can the model on the one hand do these amazing things, and then on the other hand, like repeat itself twice in some situation in a kind of an example would be, let's say you use vibe coding to do something and you go to some place and then you get a bug. And then you tell the model, can you please fix the bug?
Yeah.
And the model says, oh my God, you're so right, I have a bug, let me go fix that. And it introduces a second bug.
Yeah.
And then you tell it, you have this second bug.
Right.
And it tells you, oh my God, how could I have done it? You're so right again. and brings back the first bug.
Yeah.
And you can alternate between those.
Yeah.
And it's like, how is that possible?
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not sure. But it does suggest that something strange is going on.
Okay, so there is a disconnect between doing well on evaluations, like passing this math test, passing this law exam, and so on, and being really good at it, and then like producing bugs in software, correcting one bug, producing another, or producing fake results in legal research, and so on and so forth. So there is a disconnect between the performance in evaluations and the real world performance. But we don't want AI to ace exams. And there's certainly a problem that that's the benchmark for now, that has been the benchmark for AI testing, is like, how well does it do on some exams? But being a good doctor doesn't mean that you're very good at the medical exam. It means so many more things. And this is probably also true of more intellectual pursuits like law and so on and so forth, programming. Now, here comes something which I find philosophically beautiful, because Sutskever recognizes, and he does this at different points in his talk, the importance of concepts for action. And the concept he will now talk about is scaling, and how that defined a whole line of research, how that defined how everybody right now, literally nearly every company, is thinking of AI. And this is something which philosophers, I think, have recognized for a long time, the power of concepts for not only understanding the world, seeing differences in the world, seeing similarities in the world, and also as a concept means to grasp, comes from the Latin term for grasping. So concepts are a way to grasp the world, not only mentally, but then also to act on it.
And indeed, it looks like based on various things some people say on Twitter, maybe it appears that Gemini have found a way to get more out of pre-training. At some point, though, pre-training will run out of data. The data is very clearly finite. And so then, okay, what do you do next? Either you do some kind of a souped up pre-training, different recipe from the one we've done before, or you're doing RL, or maybe something else. But now that compute is big, compute is now very big, in some sense, we are back to the age of research. So maybe here's another way to put it. Up until 2020, from 2012 to 2020, it was the age of research. Now, from 2020 to 2025, it was the age of scaling, or maybe plus minus. Let's add error bars to those years, because people say, this is amazing, you got to scale more, keep scaling, the one word, scaling. But now the scale is so big, like, is the belief really that, oh, it's so big, but if you had 100x more, everything would be so different? Like, it would be different for sure. But like, is the belief that if you just 100x the scale, everything would be transformed? I don't think that's true. So it's back to the age of research again, just with big computers.
I mean, what I love about this is how clearly he makes a connection between some conceptual thinking about something and the economic consequences of this conceptual thinking. It's really around the idea that if you throw enough money at something, you get enough compute and you get enough data, and then you will have a better model and therefore a better potential for commercial success. This was the thinking. And of course, he's right to say that that's something that companies love. It's way more reliable because many of these companies have a lot of money than, let's say, doing research, which we will have to get back to next. Because in research, there's much more insecurities. Maybe you throw a lot of money at something and nothing comes out, or something too limited or that's not profitable comes out, right?
We got to the point where we are in a world where there are more companies than ideas by quite a bit. Actually, on that, there is this Silicon Valley saying that says that ideas are cheap, execution is everything. And people say that a lot.
Yeah.
And there is truth to that. But then I saw someone say on Twitter something like, if ideas are so cheap, how come no one's having any ideas? And I think it's true too.
This boils down to something I've said here a few months ago. Ideas are relevant. At one point, Sutskever says, in Silicon Valley, people constantly repeat that an idea is worth nothing, that it's all about execution. And I've questioned this before, and now he questions it too. And he says, why, if ideas are nothing, why are there no ideas? Everybody's working according to the same paradigm. And this paradigm sucked out all air of the room, to use his metaphor, which means there was no more funding for alternative routes to AI. Everything went into LLM and everything went into scaling. And there are people who have pointed out that this is a problem. Karen Howe does it in her Empire of AI book, for instance. And now there's recognition from the side of the researchers too. And here comes the last point. And for me, this is also interesting because you will see that this again is philosophical thinking. He's talking about bottom-up approaches and top-down approaches. This is something that has been essential in science theory for a century, at least over a century. The question of how does observation relate to theory and vice versa, right? So there were different ideas. There was logical empiricism, where they basically thought that you went from observation to theory, that you should have some kind of observation language, and then you develop the theories out of that. Karl Popper said there is something like falsification. You have a theory, then you look at data, and if the data contradicts your theory, then the theory is falsified. Then Kuhn came along with, coining the word paradigm shift in his Structure of Scientific Revolutions, and said what Popper said is actually wrong. Most of the times when someone sees that the observation doesn't confirm the theory, they don't let go of the theory. They're like, oh, maybe I set up my experiment wrong, and so on. So theories are actually resistant to observation. And that's what Sutskever will be talking about. And interestingly, where in Popper, this seems to be seen as a limit of this paradigm, where basically the paradigm suppresses counter-evidence and only breaks apart when there is really a lot of counter-evidence and when there's a new paradigm on the horizon. Sutskever actually says, no, there is a value in not letting go of your paradigm, of your theory, as soon as you see a problem, because this might just be a bug, you might just have done something wrong. So he kind of advocates for top-down thinking, and he nearly makes an aesthetical argument.
Simplicity, elegance, correct inspiration from the brain, and all of those things need to be present at the same time. And the more they are present, the more confident you can be in a top-down belief. And then the top-down belief is the thing that sustains you when the experiments contradict you. Because if you just trust the data all the time, well, sometimes you can be doing a correct thing, but there's a bug. But you don't know that there is a bug. How can you tell that there is a bug? How do you know if you should keep debugging, or you conclude it's the wrong direction? Yeah. Well, it's the top down. Well, how should you can say the things have to be this way?
Right.
Something like this has to work. Therefore, we got to keep going. That's the top down. And it's based on this like multifaceted beauty and inspiration by the brain.
So what does this whole thing mean? I think it's really interesting, because if he's right, it means that all these companies spending billions and tens of billions on compute won't have a breakthrough. And it also means that companies that have less resources can actually be defining, and researchers who have less resources can be defining the future of AI. Because here is at least one very influential and important researcher recognizing that the paradigm that he helped develop and that he helped push won't get us to the next level of AI. So scaling has, according to this, already reached its limitations. And maybe we will get better real-world results, but we don't get the real world results that we are being promised since this whole thing started. So that's it, basically. These are some of the takeaways. If you notice some other things or have critical thoughts, please put them in the comments. Thanks for watching.